Hello and welcome. I'm Abby Hitzman, the project manager of the Creating Portraits of Community project, and we are so happy to have you with us here today. Our session is taken directly from the Creating Portraits of Community project, an ongoing collaboration between teachers from Washington, D.C., rural Kansas, and Kentucky, as well as the Smithsonian American Art Museum, National Portrait Gallery, National Museum of American History, and Smithsonian affiliates in Kansas and Kentucky. The project has two phases, a building and a collection phase. Students first complete the project curriculum by building visual literacy, critical thinking, and analyzation skills by using primary source material like photography, portraiture, oral history, audio recordings, and transcripts. Next, students take their new skills and collect portraits of their community by interviewing and photographing people in their community. Today, we will build skills that can be applied to ready-to-use classroom learning materials and view student work. But first, let's get to know our presenters who are also currently working on the project. Next slide, please. Like I said, I'm Abby Hitzman, and I am the project manager of the Creating Portraits of Community project.
Good day, I am Jocelyn Coe, and I am part of the education department at the National Portrait Gallery as the student programs coordinator.
Next slide, please.
Sorry, I forgot my photos in a different slide. Hi everyone, I'm Eden Cho. I'm a museum educator at the National Museum of American History's pre-K to 12 education team.
Hi, I'm Taya Green. I am a DCPS educator and I teach 7th and 8th grade social studies.
Next slide, please. So what will we be exploring today? In this session, we will discover techniques and thinking routines to explore photography and oral history. These techniques will build vocabulary, comfort with visual literacy, and outline steps on how to collect and document oral histories. We will make connections to community using photographs and oral histories. We will reflect on past examples, leave with ready-to-use mini lessons, and see examples of how those lessons can be adapted for your classroom. Next slide, please. How will we get there? So in this session, we will create context in order to work with photography and oral history. We will look at examples from the classroom. Some student work discusses the topic of gun violence. We will let you know before we view student work later in the presentation with a disclaimer slide. We will also reflect on why it is important to document, share, and preserve our stories. Lastly, you will leave the session today with many lessons and resources from participating Smithsonian museums and the Creating Portraits of Community project. Jocelyn will now start us off with the Create Context section and how to look closely at portraiture.
Thanks, Abby. Well, yes, to put things into context, as part of the Creating Portraits of Community project, the first phase involved holding teacher workshops both in person and virtually. They were held jointly with our Smithsonian affiliates in Kansas and Kentucky. And during those workshops, we were able to model the strategies and techniques that each of the three museums had to offer to collectively create the projects. And today, you get a condensed version of it, plus some of the outcomes. Next slide, please. So first off, I wanted us to consider the question, what does community mean to you? And go ahead and put in the chat box your response. Community, what does it mean to you? And just to prime the pump, the dictionary definition of community is a feeling of fellowship with others, common attitudes, interests, and goals. But what does community mean to each of you? All right, we're getting some responses. Community means humanity, comfort zone, safe space, interactions with a group, Wonderful. Living and working and playing together for sure. Oh, I love it. Community means togetherness. Well, please keep your responses coming. These are wonderful, and keep these in mind during the session. Now, with every community, there are stories to be told and shared. And stories can actually be told through portraits. In fact, the mission of the National Portrait Gallery is to tell the story of the United States through the individuals who have helped shape the nation's history, culture, and development. And in a second, we're going to take a close look at a portrait and see what story of community can be revealed. But just to make sure we're all on the same page with the word portrait, if you could, in the chat box, tell us, how would you define what a portrait is? What is a portrait? And I know there can be several different responses, and portraits can come in various forms. What is a portrait, and how would you define it? All right, so we've got a portrait is a depiction of one or more people, a representation of a person. Excellent. All right. Well, essentially, a portrait is a likeness of someone. Next slide, please. Well, we like to say that a portrait can be read using clues or elements of portrayal. There may not be any words in the portrait, but we can read them with these elements. There are generally 10 elements of portrayal, but in the interest of time, I wanted to touch on just 3 of them. So for now, I would love you all to be interactive with responding. So take a moment, take a look at the portrait from top to bottom, left to right, and zero in on one of the sitters, the individuals in the portrait. Choose one and take a close look at the element of pose. How is the individual posing? What is their posture? Go ahead and put that in the chat box. What are you seeing with how the figure that you've chosen, the sitter, is positioning their body? Essentially, what body language are you seeing? And this will give a little hint to the broader story. All right, so we are seeing in the chat box great responses. We've got sitters that are crouched over, focused, engaged. It looks like they're listening, they're leaning over. Excellent. So you see some of the figures are gesturing and pointing. Wonderful. So here, just based on pose and posture, a little bit of the story is coming out. We've got sitters that are positioned in a way that seems to be intent on something that they're all focused on. Wonderful. Well, let's move on to the next element that will help us figure out the story here, and that is objects. In the chat box, go ahead and freeform all the objects you're seeing in the portrait. It can be big, it can be small. What things are you seeing? What items are in the portrait that can help us figure out more about what's going on? And students love looking for objects in portraits. It's a bright spot for them. All right, so we are seeing computers, a map, a screen, a room. And there is notation that the map is rather large of the world. Excellent. Ooh, and there's some supposedly instruments that may be used to calculate or measure things. Okay, we're seeing desks, charts, switches. Awesome. All right, so more of this story is coming together based on the objects that you're seeing, based on all these things around our sitter and what the sitters are also looking at. Final element I wanted us to zero in on is clothing. Go ahead and put in the chat box, what are our sitters wearing? And a lot of times clothing is a way to show some historical reference, as well as a clue to perhaps what the sitters do. And as you're putting in the chat box, the clothing that our sitters are wearing, I see that there were a couple more objects that were identified, including an ID badge, perhaps. Great. So we're seeing, in terms of clothing, the sitters are in suits, collared shirts, jackets, ties. Wonderful. Oh, someone's put men in black. Wonderful. All right. So we have gathered, believe it or not, enough information to tell a bit about the story going on here in this portrait. We have our figures, our sitters that are dressed professionally in their suits. They are all hovered over intently looking at a monitor of sorts, and they seem to be in a room for work. And that is all true. We have here actually our very first community of American astronauts. And these were the Mercury 7 astronauts that were chosen from a competitive pool of test pilots. And the photograph was taken in 1961 by an artist photographer named Flip Schulke. Now, NASA had just been created a couple years prior, and they had invited these photojournalists, these artists, to come in and document NASA's preparation for space. And it is these 7 that we see here, and they are focused in on a monitor that shows the gantry in Cape Canaveral, Florida. Next slide, please. Now, had we had more time, we would have been able to touch on a few more of the elements. And these are the additional 7 elements that you can use to explore and look further in a story of the portrait. So you can see portraiture is a wonderful window into lives and stories and communities. And it is the first layer or first piece to the project. It can also be a springboard to relevant topics of discussion, and also at looking at varying perspectives. And with that, I'll pass it to Abby to explain more.
Thanks, Jocelyn. As Jocelyn pointed out to us, the elements of portrayal help us to look closely at an image and consider the messages it's communicating. Now we will use a different critical thinking tool, the 5 lenses, to look at the same photo through different perspectives. Next slide, please. The 5 lenses we are looking at today are cultural, governmental, economical, technological, and geographical. Each lens has a different focus. The cultural lens focuses on traditions and human expression. The governmental focus focuses on, or governmental lens focuses on the influence of law and politics. The economical lens focuses on industry and wealth. The technological lens focuses on evidence of tools, innovation, or technology. And the geographical lens focuses on land and climate and how humans have impacted the environment. For our purposes today, we're going to specifically work with the cultural and technological lenses. So let's look again at this photograph that we've been working with so far in our session. Give it another gander. Now let's look through the cultural lens. And again, the cultural lens focuses on evidence of tradition, value, and human expression. I'm going to give us a couple moments just to collect our ideas. Next slide, please. So this is a detail of the astronauts at the front of the photo around the screen that Jocelyn described as showing us the gantry. So for me, when I'm looking through a cultural lens, I am drawn to this cluster of astronauts and their similarities. They're wearing, as we discussed earlier with their clothing, they're wearing very similar suits. I would say their pose is even similar. They have similar haircuts, and their gender and race are also very similar. All these similarities bring me to ask the open-ended question, what can we tell about institutions in the United States at the time this photo was taken, based on who's not present in the photo? And how would the photo be different if it was taken today? So now it's your turn. After looking at the image, what open-ended questions can you come up with based on the cultural lens? When you have some questions that you've come up with, please place those in the chat box. I'd love to hear what you come up with. We're getting some great questions. Some of the big ones: where are the women? What barriers kept minority communities out of this room? Where are people of color? I guess too, as Jocelyn pointed out earlier, these were very specific pilots taken from a very specific program, and I can't imagine access to that was readily available in the 1960s. What role did women play in aeronautics during this period? How did the men in the photo or the photographer think about the fact that they were all white men, and if they thought about it at all? Thank you for your wonderful open-ended questions, and keep it coming. We're just going to move on, and for the sake of time, to our next lens. So let's switch lenses to the technological lens. Next slide, please. So as we touched on before, this was mission control at NASA in the 1960s for the very first space launch. And these are two details taken from the original photograph, one showing the tracking map on the wall and the other a close-up of the gantry in the front of that front screen that all the astronauts are very focused on. And with this being technology that was launching people into space, I can't help but not think this technology was cutting edge for the time. And then this leads me to think about the open-ended question of how would my smartphone compare to the technologies in this photo? And also, how did these initial technologies help push innovation today? Or what did these first NASA inventions, or how did they impact what we're using today for technology in our homes? So now it's your turn. After looking at the technological lens, or sorry, after looking at the image, what open-ended questions can you come up with based on the technological lens? Are there only monitors in the room? What skills are being shown? Based on mixing with our earlier lens, have there been positive changes from then to now? based on who's participating in NASA flight programs? Were there any secret concerns related to the display of the gadgets? I thought about this too, especially if this photograph was displayed right after it was taken in the early 60s. Why did the photographer choose to pose all of the astronauts rather than having a look at the camera? Were they observers of technology or end users? That's a good one too. Well, thank you again for your open-ended questions. And just to recap very quickly, we use the cultural and technological lenses to analyze portraiture and photography. Using the lenses when working with primary sources like artworks, documents, and photography, or other things that you're using in your classroom can help to build critical thinking skills and formulate deep questions about the sources you're working with. Next, we will learn about other important methods for thinking critically and bringing out stories of community through the collection and documentation of oral histories. Eden will walk you through the different steps of documentation, and throughout the steps, Ms. Green will discuss how she adapted the steps for her classroom, as well as share student work completed during the project.
Thanks, Abby. Next slide, please. So in its simplest definition, oral history is storytelling. It's a way to connect us to what is happening locally, nationally, and globally. History is happening every day, and young people are part of witnessing, creating, documenting, sharing, and remembering that history. When you document an oral history, there is the storyteller, the interviewer, and the recorder. If you're not sure where to start, you can always begin with analyzing an already existing oral history from your community by utilizing your local library, museum, or archives. There are 5 core steps in conducting oral history, and you may see some of these steps being modeled between Ms. Green and I during our segment. So number 1, prepare. Who would you like to learn more about? Is there anyone whose histories might have been overlooked? Is there a community member who is willing to share their story? One of the most important aspects of the preparation is receiving the storyteller's consent. It's important the storyteller feels safe and comfortable, and they know they can clarify, retract, and withdraw their comments at any time. Number 2, equipment. It seems like every teen is glued to a phone these days, not even the teen, adults as well, myself included. But if they're not, where or who can you go to for a recording device? Number 3, questions. Come prepared and have a list of open-ended questions. Every teacher knows the how, what, why, when, where, and who. As students prep their questions, a good way to frame this to them might be, if someone asked you to record the stories of your life, what questions would make you feel more comfortable telling your stories? Number 4, record. Remind the students that they should be active listeners, and even before students participate in the recording process, have them participate with one another, or have them practice with one another. Allow the space and time for the storyteller to speak. Don't talk over or interrupt the storyteller. Use nonverbal communication, such as eye contact and nodding. Follow your curiosities and ask more questions. And number 5, share. Share it with the storyteller and share it with the public. Every learning environment is different. And this past school year, I had the best time collaborating with Ms. Green, who teaches 6th, 7th, and 8th grade social studies in the Anacostia neighborhood of Washington, D.C. So, Ms. Green, how did your students receive this lesson in your classroom, or what kind of skills did they gain from this lesson?
Sure, Eden. My students gained many skills while working on this project, some being asking thoughtful and intentional questions, becoming active listeners, becoming a witness to history, and noticing whose voice is the loudest and quietest during global, national, and local events. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to share an audio sample from a student submission. Please be advised that gun violence will be discussed. Feel free to step away and or mute your computer if needed. I'll give you a couple seconds.
Good afternoon. I am Famaya Truga. I'm doing an interview on teenage violence, and I'm interviewing a mother, Letitia Tony, who has lost her 17-year-old son due to youth violence. I have a few questions to ask you. One is, how do you feel about your son being the first homicide in 2023?
Good afternoon. I'm Letitia Tony. After losing my son due to gun violence, teenage violence in 2023, I have felt devastated ever since then. Felt like as a mother, I failed in a lot of areas, but overall, most importantly, devastating. Nothing I can explain on how I feel about that.
Next slide, please. One of the challenges of teaching oral history to middle school learners is creating thoughtful, open-ended questions. To teach this skill, my students participated in See, Think, Wonder activities. Today, we'll do a variation of this activity as a Hear, Think, Wonder. Eden, what did you hear from the audio clip?
I heard a mother who tragically lost her son. I heard some form of the word devastating twice. I heard background noise, and I heard like crinkling and like turning of pages, which makes me, or I'll wait until the second, I'll wait until think.
Okay. What did you think about the audio clip?
So from what I heard of the crinkling and turning of paper, I think Famaya had prepared questions and had a notebook in front of her. And I also think that this is a really heavy topic and story that's been recorded and shared.
Okay, and what do you wonder about what you heard in the clip?
I wonder how long the entire interview was. I wonder how Letitia's doing now, and Famaya as well, having heard the story. And I wonder how Famaya chose Letitia to be the storyteller, and if she knew beforehand that Letitia would talk about her son. So there's a picture up on the slide. I know that that's part of Famaya's project. So can you tell us more about Famaya's oral history interview, as well as this photograph?
Sure, Eden. Famaya chose this topic because the topic also deeply impacted her as well. The interviewee is actually Famaya's aunt. Letitia not only lost her son, but Famaya also lost her cousin. The image is the location of the actual murder.
Thank you for sharing such a powerful story, and please extend our gratitude to Famaya as well. Can you tell us more about other stories that came out of your classroom throughout this project?
Of course, Eden. Can we go over to the next slide? So gun violence was a hot topic for this project, as many of my students have been directly impacted by it. The photo on the left shows the work of a student who has chose to focus on preventative measures her community is using to combat gun violence. In the picture, you'll see the back of a Safe Passage ambassador whose main responsibility is to support students as they travel to and from school and throughout the community. On the right is a photo taken in my actual classroom. It shows a bullet hole in our classroom window. In addition to heavy topics, students also chose more uplifting stories as well. This photo highlights one of our major school values of sisterhood. On the next slide, sorry. The Sisterhood Shout-Out Board is used peer-to-peer to recognize students who model our school's ideals: integrity, discipline, enjoyment, achievement, and again, sisterhood.
Ms. Green, thank you again for sharing Famaya and Letitia's story and how your students are uplifting each other by practicing the tenets of sisterhood in the classroom. Thank you so much. Next slide. Yeah, of course. Next slide, please. Now, after hearing other stories, think of your community and how the history you have created with neighbors, friends, and other community, and think of the history you have created with neighbors, friends, and other community members. Why is it important to document, share, and preserve our stories? Please put your responses in the chat box. So also we can reflect on this question and learning the different critical thinking techniques through Jocelyn with the portraits or the elements of portrayal. And then after speaking with Miss Green and Eden and how to do hear, think, wonder, or or different ways to get deeper questions from students. And also with looking through different perspectives or different lenses, and how that can also help students to come up with more in-depth questions and thinking about larger topics like community. Thank you for your responses that are coming in. We have, thank you for sharing. You can teach from the book, but students bring their real life experiences into the classroom, which is really powerful, being able to learn from each other's experiences and taking different perspectives. It's important to have firsthand recollections so we know the truth when history is rewritten. Also, having students being able to choose what community means to them, it can encourage students to participate and explore the topics that are relevant to them and that are interesting to them. Also, having students center their narrative also brings forth voices that are not always present in textbooks. Documented history is shaped by those in power. Through documenting our own stories, we are included. So we're all creating the history of our communities. I know I felt the same. I had a grandfather recently passed away, and being able to chat with him about his life and have our family stories together, it's really powerful. And when you have those written down and when you can have those with others in your community and share it, it really becomes more. Would any of our team members like to share what community means to them?
Abby, I think you've summed it up pretty well. And definitely, I love the responses that have been coming in. And definitely, community really is family of sorts, and how everyone's story is important and should be told and shared.
I also think that maybe community isn't tied to a physical location. Maybe your community is elsewhere in the world.
I echo you, Eden. I agree that it could be a place that just contributes to your identity. So it's a way that you can identify in a group of like-minded people or individuals.
Ms. Green, I agree with you. And I also feel like community can also be, you can have more than one community in different ways that can serve you. And I just know in different aspects of my own life, having different people with shared experiences in those different aspects really helps to make you feel like you can relate and makes you kind of want to share more sometimes. See if we have some more comments coming in. Thank you so much, everyone, for your responses. We greatly appreciate it. This is a great way to encourage students to focus on their experiences and reflect more critically and intentionally on what is happening. The multi-generational aspect is also always important. getting people who maybe wouldn't ordinarily talk to each other out in the community and interacting again. What do we think? Any more community, or are we ready to move on? Okay, well, thank you again for sharing all of your thoughts. We really appreciate it, and keep them coming because we will have a question and answer session in just a couple moments. We have a couple of housekeeping things before we leave you, but we'll get back to questions and comments at the end. So next slide, please. Lastly, we will leave you with some resources that we have used during the Creating Portraits of Community project. On this slide are the lesson objectives taken from the project. The 3-lesson curriculum is available online through the Smithsonian Learning Lab, and we are dropping the link into the chat for you. So this is the direct link that takes you to the Smithsonian Learning Lab website. And then once you click on the link, the next slide will show you a picture of what will come up once you click on the link. So next slide, please. This online resource contains 3 lessons that can be done synchronously or asynchronously in the classroom or at home by students. Each lesson is differentiated by a title slide and a new heading color. Next slide, please. In addition, each participating Smithsonian Museum that's been participating in the project, the Smithsonian American Art Museum, National Portrait Gallery, and National Museum of American History, they're all separate links for different learning resources at each of those different museums. And all of those links are being provided, in the chat box. So through each of those links, you'll find further teacher workshops, classroom resources like lesson plans, or smaller, I know everyone's saying bite-sized now, but smaller bite-sized little activities you can throw in here and there. And then also at-home learning activities if you have kids that are under school age. So I encourage you to check out those websites. Next slide, please. So of course, thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate you taking the time and hanging out with us this afternoon. So please remember to check your local library, archives, historical sites, neighborhood organizations, churches, community leaders, and also the Smithsonian has affiliates in, I believe, almost every state. So be sure to check those out to learn more about local initiatives to collect oral history in your community. So now we'll move on to some Q&A. So let us know what questions you have about the project in general, about specific learning techniques, or the different critical thinking activities that we use in the curriculum during the project.
I see 1 or 2 questions about oral history, or about the project specifically. I wonder if Famaya knew the son or the mother. Yes, we do find out that Famaya, the mother who was interviewed is Letitia, the aunt of Famaya, and that her son is her cousin, is Famaya's cousin. And how old were students that were interviewing community members? Ms. Green, can I throw that to you? And can I also add on to that question, what were the students' process in choosing community members to interview?
Yes, so I teach 7th and 8th grade, so my students range from 13 to 15 about. The students they kind of struggled at the beginning of figuring out what topic to pick. And so we spent a lot of time unpacking what's important to them, the things that they've seen in their communities that they would like to uplift, or the things that they would like to change. And from that, they were able to narrow down a topic that they felt comfortable researching and exploring, and finding somewhere in their local community that they felt were an authority on the topic to give them more insight.
I see a few more questions. Jocelyn, maybe you can take this one. What is meant by scale?
Oh, yes. Thanks, Eden. Yes, scale is one of the elements of portrayal, and it essentially is how big or small the portrait or the artwork is. And that comes into play in terms of how the portrait is seen. So scale is size. And I think there is also a question about lenses and the 5 lenses. Abby, did you want to take that one?
Sorry, I'm not seeing it on our, which part of the Google chat are you looking at? Sorry, I couldn't see it. I can take
Sure.
it. You want to
Yep.
read it out loud? Thank you.
Yep. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but yes.
No, it's good to be,
The
it's good to be
question
on the spot.
was, how might we cite these 5 lenses, and did they originate from a specific framework?
Citing as in,
And perhaps it was Project Zero.
yep, it would be Project Zero. And also this was adapted a bit from Project Zero. So within the perspectives, you can even do, you can kind of choose really anything. So even within that, you could do perspectives as, like, for me, I identify as female. So I could even, instead of doing more of like a social topic, I could even go through like a female lens, or maybe what my job is. So you can also tailor it as more personal lenses. They don't necessarily also have to be through a larger social topic.
Ms. Green, a lot of questions for you. What are some of the ways or formats that are used for the share portion of a project like this? And I know that you always try to do something at the end of the year.
Are we talking about like a in the end of the year activity where the students, they would like host their show, their exhibit essentially? Yeah, so the students were allowed to kind of make use the Trifo Science Fair boards. And we also had a in-class interview session where we allowed them to talk to another student from another class to just orally share out their project and their approach to the project. It being a 2-year project, the students next year, we will host the actual fair where we want to collaborate with our local feeder schools to invite them so that they can be introduced to documenting stories as well. So the 2 ways were in-class interviews as well as kind of like a science fair style display of their photography.
And then can you speak to the strategies around trauma-informed care that you employ in your classroom while engaging these challenging topics?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's a big question. So, trauma-informed care, I think my approach to it was that I made sure that I had one-on-ones with each student to really unpack their approach. Because we had so many students that wanted to do gun violence, that was important to me to make sure that they were being sensitive to the topic, taking the topic seriously, and wanting to know why they selected the topic and their initial plan of approach to it, what they wanted to reveal about the topic. I worked with the local social workers, well, our in-school social workers and school counselors to also do check-ins with students that were doing those topics, because I learned a lot about my students through the topics that they selected. So it did lead me to say, hey, to our school counselor and social workers, if you could do some lunch bunches. We have a lot of students that have just recently within the school year lost members to gun violence. And I'm sure that they were informed, but being that so many students, and they being the school admin, social workers and guidance counselors, but being that they were working on it presently, and being aware that it can trigger so many emotions, I wanted them to make sure that they had a safe space. So again, the school social workers and counselors and myself, we held lunch bunches that students can come and check in with us about their topics and their approaches, as well as I did one-on-ones with students with hot topics.
And one more question. In the powerful gun violence oral history, what was the most surprising to you as a teacher? These are really great questions.
I was most surprised by the clip that we listened to. And I was just impressed, I think, or eye-opening that she was able to get the interview. And of course, that led to like, well, how do you know this person? And for the answer to be, well, she's actually my aunt. And my family member was the first murder of 2023. So that kind of triggered something in me. So that I would say that was the most eye-opening interview or selection that we had. And I guess also seeing my students kind of transform with taking the ownership of this work, because a lot of the stories were personal to them. Like it was a different level of seriousness once they got through the weeds of figuring out how they were going to approach the project. I feel like through the project really matured quite quickly with their student work and work ethic to get the story told.
This is a really great for Jocelyn. Nicole, I'm assuming also works at a museum, Toronto's Royal Ontario Museum. How can these lessons be transferred into on-site gallery programs?
Oh, that is a wonderful question. And I like to say that museums are just a larger version of a classroom. And so we can definitely, at least with the portrait gallery, again, it's one of those visiting the museum, seeing what objects, what artwork connect with the students, and then perhaps that would be a way to inspire the students to think about their own community and their connections with the community based on the artwork. And from that, they can definitely take on and further that connection in making it personal. So this can definitely be adaptable within a museum setting.
So I'm seeing another question coming in, just transitioning to more of the publication side. So this is a really good question. What was the publishing process for all of the stories that were collected from students? So right now, none of the photos have actually been published, so to speak, yet. So we're in year 1 of our grant still, which is our pilot phase, and then moving into year 2 in the fall. So we'll also collect more student work in year 2. But to do a little plug for our project, and I know you guys would have to come back frequently and check out the different websites for our participating museums, but the ultimate goal is that student work will actually be published within the Smithsonian American Museum website to correspond with the 250th anniversary of the US. So that's set to launch in 2026. So we're hoping to display student work along with some oral transcripts and some informational videos, and also the curriculum that we're piloting and working on through the project. So that will all be available for free online in 2026. So we have a little while to wait for everything, but stay tuned. Also with that, just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today. We've had the best time. You have wonderful questions. And also I'll ask our moderator if she'll pop my email address in the chat. So if you have any other questions for any of us after our presentation's over, if you have any questions about the project, please don't be shy and send me an email. Otherwise, thank you so much again for joining us, and thank you to all of my colleagues. It's been a pleasure.